of about 40 to 45 minutes in length, and then he'll be taking some questions from the floor. So without further ado, can I welcome the Chief Rabbi, Ephraim Mirvis.
Thank you, Charles, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honor for me to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. And we're meeting at a time when we're experiencing some fresh divisions within our challenging world. What do I mean? Until recently, when one would identify divisions within political circles, one would probably refer to East versus West, left versus right, conservative versus liberal with small c and small l. But today there is a new reality. It's a new fault line. Drawbridge up versus drawbridge down. Them versus us. Inclusive versus exclusive. And we're finding that people need today, in so many countries, to address a number of crucial issues. The first relates to trade. Will we be open to engage in global trade, or will we prefer to engage in trade just amongst local businesses and to prefer them always? When it comes to our culture, are we open to other cultures permeating through to impact to outsiders, refugees from wherever they've come and for whatever reason they've come, to enter through our borders and to become citizens of our countries? Are we going to instead apply quotas on those numbers? Or will we perhaps even say, no, we're closing our borders to refugees? The answers that we give to these critical questions will define where we stand within the new divide. Do we believe in a particular identity for us ourselves, or are we universally minded? And we're finding that there is increasing tension between the two groups. The middle ground is thinning out, and people are taking a staunch and outspoken stand one way or the other. It's finding its expression in national elections, in democracies across the globe, and it is also contributing to an increase in hate speech and action. So let me ask the following question. With regard to Judaism, how do we define our faith? Would it be particular or universal? Inclusive or exclusive? Our faith was founded by those whom we call Hebrews. Abram and Sarah, as is described in the book of Genesis, and which just happens to be the text that we're currently reading in our synagogues. The term Hebrew comes from Ivri, which means the one who crosses over, with reference to somebody who has crossed over a river, meaning he's left others behind and he or she is now on the other side. So the very term Hebrew has the connotation of them and us. We are now separated physically, and the implication is also ideologically, from those on the other side. And we find within Jewish faith that we are indeed different. We have a different Sabbath, we have different festivals, the type of which others don't have. We have a strong identity about who we are and what we are about. There are many commandments in our Torah which are exclusively for us. And you have a passage in the book of Jonah, which is read in our synagogues on our holiest day of the year, Yom Kippur, where Jonah the prophet is fleeing from the word of God. The Almighty had told him to go to Nineveh and to preach to them about their pending doom and to try to get them to repent. Jonah, so famously, before the incident with the whale, is on the boat. And they find that there's this enormous storm that is threatening the very lives of all the sailors. They cast lots, they fall on Jonah. So the captain of the ship comes over to him, and he poses 4 questions to the stranger. Where are you coming from, and where are you going to? What nation are you part of, and what do you do? And Jonah answers these 4 questions with 2 words. Ivri Anochi. I'm a Hebrew. If you want to know the essence of my character, what I am, what I'm about, where I'm coming from, where I'm going to, I am Jewish, and I'm proud of it. That's the essence of my being. As if to suggest, this is what I am about, it's different from what you are about, and I am proud of it. And indeed, within Jewish circles, we take an enormous amount of pride in respect of what is characteristically and often exclusively Jewish. As chief rabbi, I have continuously believed that I shouldn't only talk the talk, but I need to walk the walk. It's not only important enough to broadcast the values of our faith and what we should be about, but I have it within my gift to try to initiate, to start programs, and to hopefully shape lives of individuals, families, and communities in the direction that I believe we should be going in. And it is with that consciousness of our particular identity that we introduced Shabbat UK. And it's very timely, because that's exactly what has happened over the last weekend. A most extraordinary Friday night and Saturday throughout the UK. It was the 4th that we did. We started it 3 years ago. I was inspired by the example set by the Chief Rabbi of South Africa, Rabbi Warren Goldstein, who started what he called there the Shabbos Project. And we came up with this idea which has appealed so deeply to so many people, and thankfully has been an extraordinary success. So our aim has been to engage as many Jewish people as possible in the Jewish Sabbath. And as a result, over Friday night and Saturday that we've just experienced, clearly the majority of Jews in this country were engaged with the Sabbath. Many kept the Sabbath according to all its laws. Many attended the numerous communal festivities. So we had in Lee Valley Stadium 1,500 school children from 19 Jewish schools coming together to celebrate the Sabbath that was going to be coming. We had chalameks, that's the preparation of the Jewish bread, in close to 100 centers around the country. Over 15,000 people baked more than 50,000 loaves in anticipation of the Sabbath. We had thousands of examples of wonderful home hospitality that people prepared for and offered their homes for. We said we want something which goes beyond anything that's been produced before. Reach for the skies. And many communities had record numbers at communal meals. Many had to put up marquees because their synagogue halls weren't big enough for the occasions. Ceremonies for the commencement of the Sabbath, ceremonies for the conclusion of the Sabbath. And all of this was about our exclusive identity. It's we as Jewish people celebrating, appreciating what Almighty God has given to us so that we should be good Jews. What we did discover on all 4 occasions so far is that the spirit of our Sabbath speaks to all people. For example, the concept of digital detox. So the 10 Commandments tells us that we shouldn't engage in creative activity on the Sabbath day. So therefore, we are detached from actually creating something or destroying something on the Sabbath. So therefore, we don't turn on lights, and we don't use phones, mobile phones, any phones. We don't drive cars or travel in them, any form of transport. And for us, it's the most remarkable experience, because on Shabbat, not only do I not make phone calls, but I know my phone won't go, and I don't have my phone with me. And therefore, that sense of tranquility that I enjoy is something quite remarkable. And I'll never forget an editorial in the Times before our first Shabbat UK, which was just 3 years ago. We had been speaking nationally about the concept of digital detox. And then in the Times editorial on the Saturday before Shabbat UK, the Times called on all Jewish people in the country to keep the following Sabbath, and also called on all citizens of the UK to nominate one day a week to be their digital detox day because the Jewish Torah has got it right. And indeed, we have found that many of our laws, which are ancient in terms of time, are more relevant in our fast-moving, sophisticated, creative society in the 21st century than they've ever been before. So here we have an example of something which is exclusive to us. However, it resonates in a very relevant way with the rest of society. We found the same with regard to mealtime. For us in Jewish circles, meals are very important, that the family eats together, and particularly on the Sabbath day. So in anticipation of Shabbat UK this year, my office arranged for some professional independent research to be carried out with regard to meal times in the UK. And the results are quite astonishing. First of all, 9% of families in the UK, according to this research, only sit down for a family meal about once a year, which probably means a Christmas meal. So just under 10%, the concept of a family meal doesn't exist. And for the rest, 61% have the television on during the family meal. And it's acceptable to have phones in front of family members. And we also ask people about the usage of technology and whether they would prefer it not to be a feature of mealtime. And the result was that the younger people were, particularly the 25 to 34-year-old group, the younger people were, the more they yearned for quality family time without any technology featuring during those family meals. And for us as Jewish people, particularly on the Sabbath and the rest of the week, having the family together at a time when you know that the phone won't go and you're bonding with people in a very special human way, those relationships are our priority. And our Sabbath gives us a chance to prioritize what is really important in life: family, community, spirituality, relationships. And this certainly we have found resonates well with the rest of society, but it comes from the place that it occupies in our tradition, which is part of the exclusive nature of Judaism. When I became Chief Rabbi, I opened a new department in our office called CCE, Center for Community Excellence. It was an opportunity to inspire communities to raise the bar in terms of their programming and their activities. I raise significant sums. We provide seed funding for communities. The condition is this needs to be a program that has never been carried out before. And thankfully, it has started to change the landscape within the British Jewish community. We're now, thanks to more than 500 programs, which we have helped to fund and to inspire in more than 100 communities, we're finding that people are energized to do something that they haven't been doing before. And the result is that communities have grown in strength. The family is important and the community is important. And again, this is part of that which is particular to us. It's a Jewish community for the Jewish people within larger society. And here as well, while it relates to the exclusive nature of Judaism, it's something which the rest of society benefits from in terms of appreciating what's happening within our own communal life. We found this recently with regard to the first anniversary of the tragic murder of Joe Cox, where we participated very enthusiastically in the Great British Get-Together, through which the value of community was broadcast and appreciated by so many people. And once again, we need, I believe, to concentrate on the centrality of community in our lives. When my wife and I and some of our children moved into our new home a few years ago, we decided within the Chief Rabbi's residence that our very first event, reception in our home, would be for our neighbors. So we invited 34 families, the people living on our street, to come to us for Sunday afternoon tea, and it was fantastic. Now, our intention was to introduce ourselves to them. We found out that actually there was a far more powerful result of the event, and that is they introduced themselves to the others. Living on the same street did not mean that they knew each other, because this is what happens in many streets within modern Britain. You'd probably know the people living to your right and to your left, but two away on this side, two away, and diagonally across there. Why should I come across them? I leave my home, jump into a car and drive out, arrive back in a car and go into my home. We've lost that sense of community, and our society is poorer as a result. Again, it's a strong phenomenon of Jewish life, and the messages can be appreciated to enhance the rest of society. So, is that all we can really say about Judaism in terms of the them and us phenomenon? Is that where we stand as an exclusivist faith from whom others can learn some good ideas? The good news is that that is just the first part of the story. There's a great debate in the Jerusalem Talmud, Tractate Nedarim, where a fascinating question is asked, and that is, what's the most important statement in the Bible? It's a great question for anybody who knows the Bible. If you would be asked, well, for you, what's the most important statement? What is it? And there, a famous rabbi of the 2nd century, Rabbi Akiva, gives his answer. He says it's Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, which reads, love your neighbor as yourself. And it's a wonderful answer, because he didn't mention belief in God, Sabbath observance, the precepts which tie us to our Creator, which are all of crucial importance. He focused instead on our relationship with our fellow human beings. Famously, elsewhere in the Talmud, in Tractate Shabbat, Hillel the elder said, don't do unto others that which you don't want them to do unto you. This is the entire Torah. The rest is commentary. And I'm aware that in Christianity there is a similar teaching. And for us, again, the focus, the primary focus is on human relationships. In the academy, the contemporary of Rabbi Akiva's was Ben Azai. And Ben Azai said to Rabbi Akiva, you are wrong. There is a concept, a statement which is far more important than yours. And it's Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. And there the Bible says, this is the book of the generations of man. On the day on which God created man, in the image of God he formed him. What's so special about that verse to be the most important of all statements of the Bible? Ben Azai was saying to Rabbi Akiva, your verse talks about your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. Meaning the person you know, the person in your vicinity, the person in your community, probably the person who's a member of your faith. But from the book of Genesis we learn that every single human being has been created in the image of God. And therefore, our consideration for others should extend to one and all. And that debate within the Talmud ends on that point. Ben Azai has the final word. Part of my responsibilities is to be Chief Rabbi of the Commonwealth as well, which is an enormous responsibility. And it was in that context that 2 winters ago, my wife and I paid a pastoral visit to India. We spent 11 days in India, visiting 19 Jewish communities in 5 cities. But before we went to India, we requested from our hosts that we spend some time in the slums in Calcutta and Mumbai. It was our very first visit to India. And I don't know if any of you have been to slums in India, but if you have, then like me, I'm sure you can never get those images out of your mind. There are 2 things which are disturbing. The first is to see people suffering in the way that they suffer there, which is absolutely awful. But the second is to see a society that allows them to suffer in that way. So my wife and I came back to the UK, and we strongly believe that if you see something, if you feel that there's a calling for you to respond to an experience you've had, you need to do something about it, not just to park it and ignore it for the rest of your life. And we felt we needed to do something, having had those experiences in the slums. And we were particularly moved and inspired to see some Jewish initiatives in the slums, some from Israel, some from around the world. I suppose of all the experiences, the one for me was to put a mezuzah at the entrance to the Shravan Medical Center. A mezuzah is a scroll of parchment that is in a case that we place on the entrance to Jewish buildings. And I was asked before coming that, please would you give us the honor that you would place the mezuzah up at the entrance to the Shravan Medical Center. So what's the Shravan Medical Center? The slum that we visited in Mumbai is the Kalva slum. There are 200,000 people living there, which for Mumbai standards means that it's one of the smallest slums. And there is a Jewish man whose name is Jacob Stockman. He's an Australian. He's now settled in Israel. And he visited India as we did. A highly successful professional man, and having witnessed what was happening in the slums, he basically said, I'm going to give up my job, give up my career. I'm now going to devote the rest of my life to helping people in the slums. So he started GPM, Gabriel Project Mumbai, in memory of Rabbi Gabriel Holzberg, who had been the rabbi at the Jewish Center, where in 2008 ISIS terrorists killed him and his wife, and it was an awful tragedy. And we visited in the slums one of the many projects that GPM has started, which is a school. And I'll never forget standing, what is a school? It's this tiny room, and inside this room there are 30 kids who are crammed there. It's their only way to learn something, and obviously education will give them the power to liberate themselves from the slums. And I heard the story of a kid called Shravan, an 11-year-old boy, top student in that class. A kid who wanted one day to become a doctor, to leave those slums behind him. And everybody loved Shravan, and Jacob Stockman loved Shravan. And one day, Shravan's brother came to the teacher and said to her, Shravan's not in school today because he's coughing a lot. The next day, the brother came and said, Shravan's not in school today because he was really ill last night, coughing through the night, and so he can't come. And the next day, the brother came and said, Shravan died last night. Jacob Stockman came over from Israel to inquire what had happened to Shravan, what was going on here. And he sat with the parents who were mourning his loss, and he said, he had a cough, and it was obviously a bad case of flu. Kids shouldn't be allowed to die from that. Why didn't you take him to a doctor? And the parents said, there's no doctor. There's no medical center. We would have to jump on a train, pay some money, go to some distance. He said, there's no medical facility for 200,000 people. And so this charity opened what they called the Shravan Medical Center in memory of Shravan. And I placed that mezuzah, that scroll of our Torah, at the entrance. And it was so inspiring for me to know that the members of my faith who were contributing to the welfare and well-being of people the other side of the world in the slums in Mumbai. So my wife and I came back to London, and we decided we would establish the Ben Azai program, named after that sage Ben Azai, who took Rabbi Akiva to task, and he said, love your neighbors yourself. That's not the greatest precept. Recognizing the divinity in every soul is the most important statement. That's what we need to be doing. We raise funds, and last December we sent the first group of 16 top Jewish university students from around the UK to the Kalva slums in Mumbai so that they would gain experience working with those destitute people and to come back to be our ambassadors. The next group in the Ben Azai program this December will be going to Ghana, and I'm pleased to say there are 3 Cambridge students amongst them. And this is just the beginning of many projects that we will be doing through which we are showing that helping everybody around the world is an integral part of Jewish religion, and that I want to lead from the front. And I'm delighted that our Jewish communities are fully supportive of this. So what we're finding, therefore, is, yes, we are members of a particular faith. We are exclusive. But at the same time, we have a universalistic outlook because we have been put on earth, like all human beings, to respect and to look after the needs of every single human being. In November, we will have yet another wonderful Mitzvah Day experience. This is an initiative of the Jewish community. Mitzvah means a precept, and usually you associate a mitzvah with something that Jewish people do for Jewish people, or as part of their belief in God. But on Mitzvah Day, there will be more than 40,000 Jewish people around the UK who will be engaged in activities beyond the Jewish community. Last year on Mitzvah Day, I visited a center for refugees. I visited a church where people are sleeping overnight because they've been able to take them off the streets and give them food and look after them. We raised money for blankets for the destitute, food for the needy, beyond our community. Mitzvah Day is a very important part of what we do as a Jewish community. And then there is interfaith activity, which is another area in which we are fully involved. Now, it goes without saying that interfaith is of enormous importance, particularly today when there are deep tensions between some faiths and others, and also members of some faiths and all of our society. And I have found that when it comes to interfaith activity, it's pyramid-shaped. Right at the top, you've got faith leaders who get on really well with each other. But that relationship doesn't always flow down to grassroots level. This year we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Council of Christians and Jews. It was established in 1942, right in the middle of the Second World War, at a time when the horrors that were taking place for European Jewry were manifest and were appreciated, and there was a desperate need for greater understanding between Jews and Christians at the time. The Council of Christians and Jews was established by the Chief Rabbi and the Archbishop of Canterbury at that time. And during the past 75 years, it has carried out some amazing work of understanding to appreciate what we have in common, which is far stronger and of far greater value than what separates us. And today we recognize that in addition, there is a great need to have interfaith activity with the Muslim community and with many other minority faiths in this country. And I felt that, it's great. In my chief rabbinate, I've been with Pope Francis, I've befriended cardinals, archbishops, sheikhs, imams, but we need to do something else, which will be tangible, which will be real, which will be substantial. And so, in discussions with the Archbishop of Canterbury, we came up with the In Good Faith initiative, which is a wonderful one. In November last year, 70 rabbis and bishops and priests got together in Lambeth Palace for a day, led by the Archbishop of Canterbury and myself. And we actually matched them up from 35 areas in the UK so that every rabbi and priest would have a relationship, and that beyond that day, they would sustain that relationship and do things for their communities together. And the result has been phenomenal. It has really been magnificent because what it has been is to empower local faith leaders to have that relationship and to bring their communities together. We have celebrated the 50th anniversary of Nostra Aetate last year, and that was a wonderful document through which greater understanding came about between the Catholic Church and the Jewish community. But the reality is that the vast majority of Catholics in this world haven't heard about it, that there's been a change with regard to the attitude of the Church on matters such as deicide and other crucial matters. And within Jewish circles as well, we need to allow those at grassroots level to understand the need for greater cooperation and friendship between ourselves and others. We've just celebrated a festival called Sukkot. It's called Tabernacles. A sukkah is a temporary room. It could be made out of wood or tarpaulin or plastic, strong plastic. The most important part of it is that it has branches at the top, and for 7 days in the year, we have our meals there, and in favorable climates, people even sleep in the sukkah. The festival of Sukkot is fascinating because, first of all, it's all about our particular Jewish identity. It's something which only Jewish people do. And in fact, to have a kosher sukkah, one which is acceptable, you have to be able to see it, because it has to have those branches which are open to the elements above. So therefore, an underground sukkah will not be acceptable. It has to be out in the open. It's a statement of the fact we're Jewish, we're different, and we're proud of it. In temple times during the festival of Sukkot, 70 sacrifices were brought in order to match the 70 original nations that were formed after the Tower of Babel incident. So the number 70 in our tradition represents all of humanity, the global society of which we are a part. So on one and the same festival, we celebrate our particular identity and also our universal ideals. Sukkot, therefore, is a symbol of the whole of Judaism, through which we marry the two together, and both are equally important. And we are therefore finding that the Jewish model is one that is desperately needed through our society as a whole. There shouldn't be a them versus us, inclusive versus exclusive. There shouldn't be particular versus universal. It's important that people should be proud of their own identity, be champions of it, be loyal to it, do things for them themselves in their own way, have their own faith schools through which they study about what is specific to them in order to prepare them to be good citizens, to integrate into society, and to give a contribution of great value universally, because we respect, admire, love, and cherish every human being created in the image of God. There is only one biblical character who in our tradition is called Hatzadik, meaning the righteous. Only one of all the people in the Bible. And that would also be a good question for people to contemplate. Who would you call the righteous, the upright? The greatest of all biblical characters. And that is Joseph. It's fascinating. It's Yosef Hatzadik, Joseph the pious, Joseph the righteous. Why Joseph? You see, Joseph grew up in the home of Jacob, his father, who taught him Torah. He taught him a Jewish way of life, how to fear God. Can you imagine having Jacob, one of the founders of our faith, one of our patriarchs to this day, after whom the Jewish people is named because his name was also Israel, so we're the Israelites, country called Israel. Can you imagine having Jacob himself as your role model, as your teacher, as your mentor? Joseph therefore grew up to be loyal to his tradition, to be proud of his particular faith. And the very same Joseph became the leader of Egypt. He was there to save Egyptian society through a terrible period of famine. He was a person involved in the world around him, who was there to save the world around him. He found within his life a fusion of the particular and the universal. He was proud of his own identity. He could ward off the temptations provided by Potiphar's wife because he was a man of God, and he was always true to his faith, and he sought through his position in Egypt to enable the world around him to be positively affected by his tradition. Fascinatingly, we have blessings for our children. We love blessings. And one of the blessings we give is on Friday nights to our children, and we say, may God make you to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. To girls, we say, may God make you to be like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, our matriarchs. But for boys, it's may God make you to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Who were Ephraim and Manasseh? Two seemingly unknown and unspectacular characters. They were the two children of Joseph and his wife Othnath, born to them in Egypt. Why those two children? You see, they were raised in a home which was a traditional home, a home proud of its own identity, and a home which was engaging with the world around them. And that's the blessing we have for our children, that they should be like Ephraim and Manasseh, being proud of what is uniquely theirs, and at the same time, like their parents, being there for one and all. And therefore, our model, our Jewish model, is one which we hope should be adopted within our troubled societies across the world. So much harm is happening to us because of those going to one extreme or the other. Those who are so committed to their particular identity that they are exclusive without recognizing the rights, the privileges, sometimes even the value of life of those who are not like them. And then you'll have those who are so inclusive and extend with open arms in such a general universalistic way that they have no particular identity and they don't respect people who are proud of their particular identity. It's great to be who you are, where you're from, what you are part of. It could be a faith, it could be a community, it could be a particular brand of something or other. It could be a political party, it could be whatever you are. You're part of it, you want to be there, be proud of it. It makes you different from others, that's great. And at the same time, you can be respectful of everyone else, reaching out with affection, recognizing their right to be who they are, giving them the space within which they can express it, and at the same time, being proud of what you are. I'd like to conclude with the best model that I can give for human coexistence within our troubled age, based on our Jewish outlook. It's the model of the symphony orchestra. And the idea I take from the first chief rabbi of the Holy Land, Rabbi Abram Isaac Cohen Cook, and this is what he's preached. He said, we need to view society as a symphony orchestra. Within the orchestra, you have separate instruments. Each one makes its own individual, unique sound, different from the others. But under the baton of the conductor, the orchestra as a whole produces perfect and beautiful harmony. And so too within society. We have different groups, different faiths. We need to be proud of our own unique identity, to make our own sound in our own way, and under the baton of human coexistence, we need to blend together to produce perfect and wonderful harmony in this world. It is within our grasp if we marry the particular and the universal together, and I advocate that strongly as the way forward within our societies today. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you. I'll just move
Yeah.
That's good of me. I'm just going to move the lectern aside. Thank you very much for that talk there. Perfect. So we've got about 10 minutes or so for questions. So I was wondering whether anyone has any questions after that talk. Yes, so just the person down there. Just wait for the microphone to get to you.
Thank you. I have a question. There has been a rise in the level of anti-Semitic incidents from 2016 compared to 2015.
I'm not hearing properly.
Oh, sorry. There has been a rise in the level of anti-Semitic incidents in 2016 compared to 2015. Currently, 31% of the British Jews consider moving abroad. You mentioned one cause and also one solution, but do you think there are other causes and other solutions as well to combat this rise of anti-Semitism?
Okay. Thank you for raising the question relating to anti-Semitism, which unfortunately is a growing phenomenon and a troubling phenomenon. It is so sad to reflect on the fact that now, so long after the conclusion of the Holocaust of the Second World War, we have an increase in anti-Semitic sentiment and conduct. It's a phenomenon throughout the world, and it's affecting us here as well. We need to do everything, both to prevent and to protect. We're blessed in the UK because anti-Semitism is seen from the government down not as exclusively a problem for the Jewish people, but a problem for all of our society, which is true, because what starts with the Jews, unfortunately, goes on to affect others as well. And the fight against anti-Semitism in this country is a fight which is conducted from government down. I had the privilege just 2 weeks ago of sitting on the jury to decide on the successful design for the new Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre, which will be situated in Victoria Tower Gardens alongside the Houses of Parliament. It's going to be a wonderful statement by the British people about tolerance, a statement against hatred, through which we will remember the Holocaust in order to increase cooperation, peace and harmony within our society in the future. These are wonderful features of British society today. So I think we need to appreciate context. Overall, the situation for Jewish people in this country is good. It's healthy. Jewish people are free to express themselves in whatever way they wish. Together with that, there is a rise in anti-Semitism. It also includes anti-Zionism, which often is a way through which some people become anti-Semitic. Always, the best weapon against forms of xenophobia and racism in general is education. The more one knows, the more one understands, the more one appreciates what's happened in our past, and also the better one gets on with people, the more one will realize that everybody is a human being, and therefore one will be less inclined towards hate crime and that type of conduct. And that is why for us, in combating anti-Semitism, education is at the fore. And again, the government has been supporting us in outstanding Holocaust educational activities throughout the country. And that is there are many avenues towards combating this, but education surely must be the most important one.
Perfect. Do we have any more questions at all? I'll take one from just down here. Can you just wait for the microphone to get over to you so we get it onto the live stream? Thanks, Sally.
Hi. Just thinking about intermarriage amongst Jews and passing on Judaism to the children. Some sects of Judaism recognize the child as Jewish if the father is Jewish, but not all. Do you think all sects of Judaism should adopt the view that if the father is Jewish, the child is Jewish, and if not, why not?
In Orthodox Judaism, of which I am part and which I represent, one's Jewish status passes through the mother. It's the ultimate compliment to women and their role in shaping and fashioning our future and the impact that they have upon their children and upon our society. So there are two ways in our tradition through which a person will be considered as being Jewish. One is if one has a Jewish mother, and the other is if one converts to Judaism. There are other religious denominations which respect patrilineal descent.
Right, but why do you think that, things evolve over time, especially in Republican times? Why wouldn't that evolve?
Okay, so it's what I was saying before in respect of shaping an identity and who has the primary impact on a person. It is more so the mother than the father. That is how this has come about and how our tradition has grown in respect of enabling a person to have a fully Jewish identity.
And what about the view from conservative and reform guys? How do you argue against their stance?
They have deviated from traditional Judaism, so they are the ones who have changed what we have always had in place. We haven't changed anything. we are maintaining what we have always had and the definition of Jewish identity as it has always existed. They are entitled to their view and to operate as they wish. We are continuing in the tradition that we've always had.
Perfect. I'm conscious that there was another question over there. I think Zach over there. That's right, in the second row. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you very much for your talk, Rabbi. So my question's about sort of difference within Judaism. I'm not into these circles so much, but my question's about what happened at Lauderdale Road earlier in the year. And
what about the what, sorry?
About what happened at Lauderdale Road with the rabbi. I really don't know what happened, but there was sort of an issue about homosexuality within Judaism. So my question is really, how does Judaism deal with that? If it can accept difference, why was Lauderdale Road such an issue?
Okay, this has been a major affair, and it has occupied many minds, and it has been an issue at many levels, okay? And I was very pleased once the Dweck affair, as it was called, because the senior rabbi of the Spanish and Portuguese community, Rabbi Dweck, was involved in an issue within the community. I was very pleased to have a personal role in resolving that matter and bringing peace and allowing now the dust to settle following that. And it was a way through which people to our right and people to our left, extremists on both sides, and many who had questions and issues, were able to come together and to enable Rabbi Dweck, now thankfully, to be strong in his position as the senior rabbi of that community. The initial impetus started off with a lecture that he gave on homosexuality, and it very quickly moved on to many other issues. And the resolution related to those many other issues, Rabbi Dweck acknowledged certain errors on his part, made certain undertakings, and we found this eloquent and great way forward. And thankfully, what was threatening our community in many respects has now been diffused.
But I suppose my question is more, how does Judaism accommodate something like homosexuality if it's so, if it accepts difference? Because that wouldn't have been an issue if,
Okay, so similar to quite a lot of other faiths, in our traditional scriptures, homosexual physical intimate relationships are not allowed. And the point that we convey very strongly is that, earlier I mentioned the verse, love your neighbor as yourself and be considerate towards people. And what I am continuously saying for our rabbis in our communities is that every single person must be made to feel welcome. We must be inclusive of one and all, not discriminate against people, while respecting the Torah law in this regard. If you want to look at Rabbi Dweck's comments, you can look at what he said, how he said it, where he went, what was, where things were objectionable. But I think it is a reflection of how homosexuality is an issue that, there are controversies about. You've got it in the church, you've got it in other faiths. And clearly what's important from my point of view is that homophobia is absolutely, categorically a terrible sin, that we should not allow anything close to that, and we must be inclusive of all people.
Perfect. And I think there was one question from the man behind. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Rabbi. I just wanted to ask you about similar lines as the previous two gentlemen, about how you draw that line between exclusivity and inclusivity, because what you talked about, I highly resonated with, and I was very happy to hear that. Yet, I know that there are strict rules regarding interfaith marriage in Orthodox Judaism, and homosexuality, or maybe women taking more role in the rabbinical circle. So where do you draw that line, and how do you justify that with history?
Okay.
Thank you.
No, thanks for the question, and these are indeed pertinent questions today. With regard to our attitude to intermarriage, it's very much right at the heart of what I was talking about. We have a particular tradition. We're proud of our exclusive identity. In order to maintain that, we need to have committed Jewish family life. And to have such committed Jewish family life, it's important that it's an exclusively Jewish family life. And I think that's reasonable to appreciate. For that purpose, we need Jewish faith schools through which we engage with those who are part of our faith and study our faith. But all of that is part of the broader picture. It's as a result of us being strong in our tradition that we can then engage successfully with others with universalistic ideals. In the event that one would break down all barriers and would be not particular with regard to choice of marriage, that would spell the end of the Jewish people, because we would lose our own identity and it would lead to total assimilation. So that's our recipe for maintaining a strong identity and at the same time being interested in the interests of all concerned and the value of all of human life. You mentioned homosexuality, I commented on it before. The position of women in Judaism is one of our greatest challenges, as it is within all faiths. And I'm very much at the forefront of trying our very best within Jewish law to guarantee as much inclusion as possible of women. And I'm particularly proud, for example, amongst many initiatives, because I spoke earlier about walking the walk, doing something and not just talking it. So we've started our Mayan program, which is a training course which our Beth Din, that's our court of law, together with myself, we have initiated, and within which we are the teachers. There will be 10 graduates who will be ready next year to go out to communities and to be amongst the leadership group of the communities, alongside rabbis, to be senior educators, guide in various areas of Jewish law. And that will indicate a significant sea change with regard to women in our communities, together with many other initiatives.
Perfect. I'm going to take just one more question, if that's okay, because I'm conscious of the time. If I could ask the person just at the very end of the front rows.
Just a question riding off your previous remarks with regards to sort of the Jewish model of protecting identity and faith and so forth. With that in mind, would you describe the sort of European and to perhaps a lesser extent American cultural relativism and the sort of cultural elasticity as sort of symptomatic, therefore, of cultural decline?
I think that's a lovely question, and I think that there are pluses and minuses in all of this, because isn't it refreshing to have people who are open to a broadening of the cultural identity, at the same time, when there is an absence of a passion for one's own identity, it shows a weakness within society and a society in decline. And I would advocate that we need a fusion of the two. We need to have a blend of pride in one's own identity and a passion for it and championing of it, together with an openness, to include others. In my chief rabbinate, one of my proudest moments was when I visited Edomeni, which is on the border between Greece and Macedonia, at a time when there were 10,000 refugees a day passing through that area. And I had called on our Jewish community to raise funds for refugees, the vast majority of whom are Muslims. And we raised very significant sums, and I went to see how we were using them in some wonderful projects there. And I just was standing still as thousands of people were passing me, as if I was seeing history pass me by right in the middle of it. It was a very epic and memorable moment for me. And I was strongly advocating people coming into our societies from the outside, and their presence in large numbers will, without any doubt, reshape the culture within our countries. And I believe that we have an undertaking. For us, it's an obligation to reach out to others in their time of need. And I know that this is a complex subject, and I know that there are arguments and debates, and this has led to friction in countries such as Germany, where Angela Merkel totally opened the borders, and now it's being resented by her citizens, and so on. But at the core of it all, there needs to be pride in what we are about, and a readiness to include others and to bring them in.
And on that note, I think the time's just about up. So I'm sure you'd all like to join me in giving a big round of applause to the Chief Rabbi. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a few points before we head. Once we finish here, the Chief Rabbi is going to be exiting through the back door, so I'd ask if you could stay in your seats whilst that happens. One more point, just updating you on what's going to be happening in the next week or so. So there's a comedy debate on Thursday. Caitlin Jenner's here next Monday, as is Cornelia Parker. The ballots for Caitlin Jenner will be released and will be open tomorrow. That won't be first come, first serve. That'll be open for 3 or 4 days. Perfect. And once again, as we head off, it would be fantastic if you could give the Chief Rabbi a fantastic Cambridge farewell. So, thank you so much for that. Thank you.
I'll retrieve your microphone, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, our AV.
So just be careful on the step.
Yeah.